Velma is groundbreaking. In fact, I would go as far as to say that the world will never see a show like Velma ever again. But is it good? No. God, no. Obviously not. But it is interesting, and also maybe the most reductive thing to come out this decade. I'm going to be looking at what I believe the intentions for the show were and why it failed completely. It's important to look at the concept Velma attempts when speaking about the show, as it is the primary reason it is so hated. Velma aims to critique children's cartoons' tendencies to reduce people to stereotypes and ingrain those into the minds of children, with especially an emphasis on the simplification of women. Overall, not a terrible concept, but we are talking about the show Velma. Why do they even use Scooby-Doo as their backing for this? I don't really understand that either. I mean, I understand, but it is one of the worst ideas I have ever seen executed into a TV show. Velma is not a show that needed to be in Scooby-Doo. In fact, it would have been a far better idea if they had never branded it that way. The two have nothing in common except for the general concept of a mystery. The characters are bastardizations of the originals with no foundational basis for the changes. It's almost like they were trying to ruin Scooby-Doo. Wait, no, they wouldn't. But it makes so much sense. Velma is seeking to examine the genre of children's cartoons, so to accomplish this, they take a famous name and tell a completely different story. Essentially, they are purposely trying to make it as different as possible to quote unquote ruin the characters in a vain attempt to cause longtime fans of the series to realize the shallowness of the original work. By pointing at what the show considers to be a more complex series, it believes that the viewer will compare it to the original and suddenly have some sort of epiphany, such as, holy shit, Velma just made me realize my entire childhood was a lie and awoke me from my metaphorical eternal slumber. Thank you, Minda Kaling, for ruining my childhood. Now I finally understand that Scooby-Doo was not comparable to actual reality. Unfortunately, the strategy of purposely ruining something that people loved backfired, causing the show to be a complete failure. Or maybe, if you're Minda Kaling, it is a complete victory that proves your point. Quick rant. Why did they even choose Scooby-Doo? The concept itself was always going to fail as it relied on the intentional corrosion of beloved source material, but they chose Scooby-Doo. Although I was never a big Scooby-Doo fan, I always thought of it as one of the more relatively complex children's cartoons. I mean, Velma was already a smart and capable woman in the original Scooby-Doo, and they made her less so in Velma. There were hundreds of other shows that would have worked better, but I digress. Finally, to why it's bad. There isn't much that I can say here that hasn't already been said. The jokes are fucking awful, the characters are unlikable, the story makes no sense, and the pacing is all wrong. There are incessant meta jokes, obviously meant to poke fun at the genre of cartoons, relating back to its original idea. The characters are terrible, but I'll get to that later. The story is incessant. The pacing, oh my fucking god, the pacing. I'm getting PTSD from just thinking about it. Just watching episode 2, which is the worst episode of the series so far, I had to stop several times to allow my brain to comprehend how a human being wrote something so impossibly awful. Every joke is timed wrong, everything cut into itself super awkwardly, and there are more pop culture references than an entire season of Community. I will say everything after episode 2 was a vast improvement, but that is more of an indictment of episode 2 as a complete dumpster fire than praise for anything else. What confuses me more than anything is that anybody who actually takes anything from Velma to heart will lose about 10 years of neurological development. The characters are reductive to society, like the whole of society. Like the fact that this exists is single-handedly setting back society at least a decade. Let's look at episode 4. The plot of the episode revolves around the police finding the top 5 hottest women and giving them police escorts, so Velma has to do them all a favor and make them uggo, until they realize that it is okay to be hot. Need I say more? But seriously, who comes up with this shit? Velma perpetuates the stereotype that nerds are shunned, hot people are incompetent, and there is no overlap. Each character, which is supposed to be an examination of stereotypes, is just a new stereotype. Velma is an asshole genius. Fred is a rich white boy with a small penis. Daphne is. What the fuck is Daphne doing? And Norval literally has nothing besides being in love with Velma. The show takes the worst parts of high school tropes, displays them as the truth, and then plays them up. They even fail at actually being progressive. I will give them one thing. Velma is displayed as a very flawed character who is supposed to be a complete asshole, which is at least self-aware. However, anything good is still completely overshadowed by the show's disconnected plot and terrible pacing. Overall, Velma is awful. Nobody is surprised by that. I just find it incredible that someone conceptualized this show, wrote it, pitched it, produced it, filmed it, and then released it without anyone stopping them. This is a show with a remarkably horrible concept and execution, and I don't think we will ever see something on par with it for some time. What confuses me is that there are actually talented people that are on the show. Glenn Howerton, Jim Rash, and Stephen Root, to name a few. This is not even close to the worst show I've seen, mostly due to me not being a fan of Scooby-Doo. Personally, I immensely enjoyed watching it and marveling at all the incredible incompetence displayed throughout the show. If it wasn't Scooby-Doo, nobody would give a shit about this show. It would just be another woke show with exceptionally bad writing, which I can appreciate. As of now, I give Velma a 2 out of 10, verging on a 3 out of 10. Still better than Santa Inc.